It's Ron Reader Digs the Universe. I'm Ron Reader, and this is Ron Reader Digs the Universe, and tonight, Ukraine. A few notes and observations. This Russian invasion is heartbreaking to me, and I've spent the last week trying to figure out why. I mean, I like Ukraine. It's not, not just a position on the risk board. The Beatles name-checked the Ukraine girls in their song back in the USSR. Ukrainian figure skater Oksana Bayul astonished the world at the 1994 Winter Olympics, beating Nancy Kerrigan, and scandal girl Tanya Harding for the gold with an awesome interpretation of Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. Ukraine gave the Nazis utter hell during World War II, and over the years I've even gotten to know a few Ukrainians who always seem to me to be a bit classier than their Russian counterparts, as Slavs go. Their president is a comedian. Ukraine is cool. But more poignantly, I think, I'm grieving this invasion because it is the resumption of a 500-year continual military struggle for power and influence in Europe. From the rise of the so-called great powers in the 1500s until World War II, and sort of extended by the Cold War, Europeans constantly fought for top dog status on the continent. And we had been totally done with that since the early 90s, if not earlier, until now. And in a lot of ways, it's playing itself out as it always has historically, with one great power getting too big for its britches and all the other great powers uniting to pants the aggressor. Hell, even neutral Switzerland has condemned the invasion. Well, not China, and not Israel. China wants Taiwan, Israel wants Palestine, so they're cool with the invasion, but neither China nor Israel are European great powers, so I guess the metaphor fails there. The point is that Western civilization hasn't been at war with itself, not really, for some 3/4 of a century. A remarkable step forward, I think, for our cultural identity as Westerners. Not anymore. Looks like war is simply what we Westerners are about, and that's sad. There is a lot of speculation about why this is happening right now, and some of it is obvious. For starters, I think it's safe to say that Trump, as America's leader, so disorganized the West, sowing diplomatic chaos and opportunity at and absurdity at every opportunity, that it created the perfect geopolitical circumstances for Putin to strike. There's also the long-standing and fairly accurate conventional wisdom that Russia, under the Tsars, under the Soviets, under the oligarchs, has always regarded Ukraine as being deeply within its rightful sphere of control. Russia believes it needs control over Ukraine for its awesome grain-producing capability and its warm water ports, which are key to being a player in global markets. I think it's also fairly obvious just that Putin's a narcissistic piece of shit who doesn't care how many Ukrainians he kills as long as he gets a decent net result. And oh yeah, on the funny side, crackpot televangelist Pat Robertson crawled out from under his rock to assert that this is all end time shit because Ukraine is the military stepping stone to Israel. I shit you not, old Gog and Magog. Some of this speculation about why this is happening is not so obvious. MSNBC's Rachel Maddow, for instance, is asserting that Putin, an autocrat if there ever was one, simply cannot tolerate an example of successful liberal democracy right up against his border. So, as the US did in Vietnam in order to show the developing world what will happen to them if they oppose capitalism, Russia is now doing in Ukraine in order to show its own population that democracy is a pipe dream. Noam Chomsky, meanwhile, is citing 30 years of American post-Soviet aggression toward Russia, enrolling in NATO as many former Iron Curtain countries as possible, excluding, of course, Russia, which made no sense at all. I mean, Christ, we've got a nuke base in Poland now aimed right at Moscow. Of course, Putin is paranoid. I would personally add to all these causes that we, the United States, failed utterly to help stabilize Russia in the 90s when we had the chance. We should have had a Cold War Marshall Plan for Russia. Instead, we encircled them. Belligerence and autocracy were guaranteed from that point. There is a lot of responsibility to go around for this invasion. At any rate, regardless of how we got here, waging aggressive war is illegal. The worst of all war crimes as per the Nuremberg trials, because it enables all the lesser war crimes that follow. So Putin is a war criminal, and I hope very much he can be brought to justice someday. The ICC is already investigating. As for the fate of the Ukrainians, it is impossible not to note that the Russians haven't brought nearly enough soldiers to defend against an Iraq-style insurgency should the Ukrainians choose this path, if the invasion turns out to be successful. We'll see what happens. I'm Ron Reeder, and this has been Ron Reeder Digs the Universe. Join me, Ron Reeder, again next week for another episode of Ron Reeder Digs the Universe.